السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في هذه الفيديو سأريكم كيف درست لغة العربية لمدة 60 يوما. الآن لست بارعا في لغة العربية، ولكن إن شاء الله سأكون جيدا وطيبا. So today I'll be showing you absolutely everything I've been using to learn Arabic consistently for the last 60 days. I won't be gatekeeping anything, and everything that I'll be using will also be in the description, and it will be free. So you won't have to pay for anything, inshallah. So the first thing is, what curriculum am I using? And it is called the Beneficial Fundamentals in Learning the Arabic Language. Now, you're going to be learning some terminology while watching this video, which is great because I don't think it'd be beneficial for me to just go through it without anybody learning anything. So, who is the author of the book? And then you can see the name of the author, and this is book 1. So now I will show you kind of what I do in this book. And the first thing is, when it comes to curriculum, generally it doesn't necessarily matter as long as you have a teacher that's teaching you the curriculum, and the curriculum is taught in a way that is very, beginner friendly, and you're actually learning words and not bombarded with grammar. It's a good thing. So I'll show you quickly kind of what happens in this book. So here's one page, an example of a page where we have a dialogue going on. So we have, for example, two people speaking. I think one is a mudarris, which is a teacher, and the other person's name is Yusuf, which is a person. So that's an example of conversations that I have in the book. And then I also have homework with the book. So the homework is allowing me to solidify the vocabulary that I learn. So an example of some homework I did in the earlier stages was that I had written down kind of the translation of what I'm learning. So if I am trying to learn a sentence, I'd write down the translation. The teacher that I have, who is Sheikh Mu'adh on YouTube, very knowledgeable Sheikh, he would go and check the English translation that I had written down, and then he'd mark me on that. And then we also have me kind of answering these questions using my Arabic skills. So it was very limited in the beginning because I didn't know a lot. Like the question was, Man ant? I just put Ana Muhammad. That's how basic and easy it was in the beginning. And that's how it should be. Now, you may be asking, okay, how did I memorize the vocabulary and progress to be able to form sentences much more easier? Well, at the back of the book, there is a dictionary right here. So you'll probably be able to see it on the screen. Now, how I memorized this was by using a method that I described in one of my videos. And it's a very old school kind of method, but it is very helpful. And I'm going to combine it with two methods. I would firstly write down all of those words that were in the dictionary at the back of the book into here. And how I would do this, I'm explaining it very briefly because I have a whole video on how this method works. But how I would do this is I'd write the English first. So you see here I've written he doesn't care. So that's the English first. And then I'd write the Arabic on the other side. So here, it looks like a lot, but I'd write the Arabic of, he doesn't care. Wala yubalu, I think. Yes, wala yubalu. He doesn't care. Now, how I would do this is I would read the English, read the Arabic, and then once I've got that solid, I'm saying it quickly without mistakes, I write the next one. And then before I can move on to the next one, I need to say the previous one correctly with the English and the Arabic without looking. So the next one is in this time of ours, which is fi zamanina hadha. Fi zamanina hadha. The first one was wala yubalu. Wala yubalu. So I'd have to say he doesn't care, wala yubalu, and then also in this time of ours, fi zamanina hadha. So when I say those two things, that means I have completely got those two, and I continue for the entire page. Now, if it's your first time doing this, then maybe don't be that quick when it comes to, memorizing a lot of words. Maybe start with 10 words, and once they're solid, then maybe move on to, more words. But now that I've gotten used to this, I do like a whole page from there, right? Which can be around 30 to 40 words. However, this isn't the only way of learning words. There are other ways to learn words, which are watching videos, because an amazing thing that a channel mentions, which is a channel called Arabic with Khasu, he mentions that a lot of the words that you learn it by actually listening to those words a lot. So he mentioned that if you're watching videos, for example, on books, and you hear a term come a lot, kitab, 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 someone's just talking about kitab, 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 eventually that word's going to be stuck in your brain. And then eventually you're going to be, okay, what does kitab mean? Everybody's talking about kitab in this podcast. Eventually you search it up, or you manage to figure it out by the context of what they're saying or what you're seeing, and eventually you've memorized kitab without writing it at all. That's how I memorized this word mu'allif, the author, right? I memorized that just by listening. I didn't write it down. Like, all I did was see what he was kind of saying in the video, and then I managed to memorize it. So that's the best way that you can also incorporate it. So to recap, 2 ways to memorize. You can memorize using the book, which is writing down your words and then reviewing them in the method I mentioned, and then also doing the homework and then listening to different podcasts and listening to different videos. So now I'll be moving on to sarf, how I learn it and what is my methodology. So I have classes every day from 9 to 10 p.m, which helps with accountability. However, I don't have classes on Fridays, alhamdulillah, so there is some leeway for me there. However, when it comes to sarf, which is an Arabic grammar concept, which is for the term to describe conjugations, verb conjugations. So you can have, for example, a verb that conjugates based upon its wazn. Wazn means scale. So for example, the verb fa'ala and kharaja. Fa'ala means he did. Kharaja means he went out. Okay? So fa'ala, it can conjugate past tense and present tense. So I'll just be talking about those two for now because I don't want to get too into it. But for example, fa'ala can be conjugated several times based upon its intended need. So I'll have the translations on the screen as I conjugate the verb right now. So you have fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna, fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum, fa'alti, fa'altuma, fa'altunna, fa'altu, fa'alna, fa'alna. Now, all of these translations will show that this is something called a fi'l madi, a past tense verb, right? And then you also have the fi'l mudari', which is the present tense verb. So that's yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna. I'm not going to go into it, but you can see that there are different, present and past tense conjugation for this verb. Now, when I talked about the wazn, I was talking about, for example, kharaja. It sounds similar. Its wazn for the past tense is fa'ala, but for the present tense, it's not going to be yakhraju. It's actually yakhriju. So you see, certain verbs change. And why am I explaining this? It's very important, and I highly, highly recommend this. And it's what my teacher said. Anytime you come across a verb, you need to conjugate it. And that's extremely important because certain verbs have different patterns that you should recognize by being able to conjugate it. For example, there's a verb which is laqiya, right? Laqiya means he met, right? To say I met, you'd say laqitu, right? You'd say it like that. So it's very different to, for example, fa'altu, I did. For example, sha'a, which means he willed, you probably heard it in the Quran when Musa alayhi salam says, Insha'Allah, right? So that's an example of, a word in the Quran that uses sha'a. But you can use that and conjugate that in a different way to fa'ala. So for example, you can say shi'tu, which means I willed. And that, it changes the meanings completely compared to, like, for example, saying fa'altu. So conjugating is important, and also writing down your conjugation. So as you can see here, I've written down a lot of conjugational verbs. But in the beginning, definitely I focused just on the vocabulary, understanding fundamental principles, and that helped me. And also in the description, I'll have a template which explains everything I've talked about in this video, and also a conjugation sheet for the present and past tense verbs, inshallah. Now, the final topic that I've been learning is nahu, and I realized that this is something that I should have spent less time on in the beginning, because it hindered me from spending more time actually speaking the language and listening to more informative videos on Arabic grammar. And I'm not here to say Nahu is bad. It's extremely good, especially once you can understand, Arabic general conversations, and somebody can even explain to you grammar concepts in Arabic, which is alhamdulillah a stage that I've reached. However, I think in the beginning it will really demotivate you, especially if you don't even know words like bait, or a word that is very simple and something that many people should know for their level. Now, one thing that I did realize while I am learning Nahu right now is that some concepts can be extremely helpful for you when you are speaking in having conversations. For example, something called the maf'ul bihi. Now, a maf'ul is an object in which a verb is acting upon it, from my current understanding. So for example, you can have a word consisting of, a sentence, consisting of 3 parts. You have the fi'l, which is the verb, which can be something like rafa'a, which means he raised. Then you can have the fa'il, which is a person doing the verb. So you can have, for example, rafa'a Muhammadun, Muhammad raised. And then you can have the maf'ul, which is the object which is acted upon by the verb. So for example, we can use the word tifl, which means child. So putting that sentence together, we can say rafa'a Muhammadun tiflan. Muhammad lifted up the child. So now when I'm speaking to people, because I have that rule in mind, I shouldn't be making those mistakes where I use the wrong tashkil, I use the wrong vowel on the sentence or on the word. And that's something I'd say, don't take too much at once. Definitely take your time with this, because learning Arabic, yes, you want to be consistent. You want to be showing up to your speaking sessions every day. You want to be doing all of the homeworks that your teacher set you. But don't spend too much time grinding to the point where you're not even enjoying it anymore. And also don't be too lax where you're not even studying for majority of days, but you're saying you're an Arabic student, right? So you got to have a middle path, which is something that Islam, alhamdulillah, vouches for. So yeah, that is the entire video, alhamdulillah. If you really want to benefit from more things that I have created, then definitely check out the newsletter that I have. And inshallah, any mistakes that I've made, please correct me. I'm still learning. I'm not proficient in the Arabic language yet. I'm still a beginner. So if you have any criticism, anything you want to say I could improve on, please tell me in the comments, but don't be rude, because nobody takes advice from rude people, right? So Jazakallahu Khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.